day 46 of 100 days with Jesus. So back at it. Wasn't able to do one last night. Uh, anyway, moving forward tonight, day 46, 100 days with Jesus, and we're focusing on John chapter 13. John 13 is a special passage where Jesus takes some special time with the disciples. He's there having the Passover feast with his disciples in the upper room. Some have called this the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper. Jesus is there, and they're eating the meal, and Jesus gets up from the meal, and he strips himself to where he, like a servant would do. And what I mean by that, he puts on the servant's garments, and the servants, what they would do if, say, they were washing people's feet, what they would do. Jesus did that. He got down and he just began to wash each of the disciples' feet. And you just got to think about the context. It's not like a lot of us, we're not walking dusty, dirty roads, muddy roads and such with, open-toe shoes. Most of us are walking on pavement or on sidewalks or whatever, walking in buildings. We're not walking on dirty, dusty, muddy, who knows what all's in it roads with open-toe shoes, and that's what their custom and their culture was at that time. And we're talking about, some pretty nasty feet to clean, and the lowliest servants would do it. It wouldn't just be the servants, but the lowliest of servants. So he's washing each one of the disciples' feet, and he gets to Peter, and Peter's like, Lord, I am not worthy of you washing my feet. And he says, well, if I don't do that, you have no part with me. And he said, well, Lord, wash my head and wash me all over. So, and Jesus says, you're clean, but even though you're clean, you still need for your feet to be washed. And he said, not all of you's clean. And what he's referring to is, you have placed faith in me. You are one of mine. Although there was one among them who really, truly wasn't. And that's becoming more and more known throughout this time, that night. And even later that night, it's going to be very clearly unknown, unfortunately. Which one was going to be the one that was going to backstab Jesus, that was going to go and betray Jesus over to the leadership of the Jewish authorities at that time. But anyway, he does that, and he says, just as I've done this for you, you ought to do this for me. And then also, if I, the master of all of you, do this as a servant to all of you, you also ought to do the same for one another. Jesus promoted and demonstrated and taught servant leadership. The last will be the first will be the last. Those who are a servant of all will be a leader of all. And that's what Jesus demonstrated even that very night. Now, he went on to mention the fact that there was going to be someone to betray him. And they're all talking amongst themselves, and they're like, is it me? I mean, who is it? Surely it's not me. They're all second guessing themselves, and so on and so forth. And then John the Apostle, the author of the Gospel of John, he asked Jesus quietly, who is it? And then at that time, Jesus openly says, the one who dips his bread in the bowl with me, he's the one. In which many of the people at the table, many of the disciples at the table may have just thought he was just saying something generic. But John knew that he was answering specifically his specific question about who it was. And then at that moment, Judas had dipped his bread in the bowl, and Jesus told him to go and do what he's going to do, to go and do it, and do it quickly. And when he told him that, and the people heard him, the disciples heard him say that, they just assumed, well, he's the treasurer. Surely Jesus is going to have him to go buy something or something. But no, that was his way of revealing to John the Apostle who exactly it was that was going to betray him before it actually even happened. So, that's part of John 13. Going further on in John 13, there's also where Jesus commands that this is a command I give you, that you are to love one another just as I have loved you, is what he told them. And that's a tall task, because Jesus loved like nobody else ever, and like nobody else ever would. But through the same Holy Spirit that was inside of Jesus, we are given that ability to love one another just as he did too. Not perfectly like he did, but at any given moment, the perfect Holy Spirit can love perfectly at that moment. When I mean not perfectly, like every single moment of every single day, he's loving people perfectly. That was Jesus. But can we do that? Not on this earth, not at this time, but at any given moment, through the work of the Holy Spirit inside our very own hearts, inside our very own lives, working and actively loving through us, can love one another just like Jesus loved us. And that's what Jesus has called us to do as his followers, as his disciples. Shame on me, shame on you, shame on any of us who claim to be followers of Jesus, but yet we're not loving one another the way that Jesus commanded us to. God help us, and God help us all that claim to be his followers. And then he says that by doing this, by loving one another just as I've loved you, that's how the world around you is going to know that you are truly my followers. And then Jesus is talking a little bit further with him, and the topic comes up about Peter's denial. Jesus makes it known that Peter is indeed not going to stick with Jesus the whole way. He's not going to not turn away. He's actually literally not just going to turn away from Jesus and not just forsake Jesus, but he's actually even going to deny Jesus as many as 3 times. And just at the time when the rooster crows, it would have been 3 times. And one of the gospel accounts, when it's given the account of this, there's as many as 2 rooster crows. But it's after that second rooster crow, when it's at that second rooster crow that Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. Pretty wild stuff, pretty awesome stuff that Jesus had this time. And just so you know this, John, as I had mentioned in previous live streams, that Matthew really focuses in on Tuesday of that week, before Jesus would go and be crucified and rise from the dead on that Sunday. So John's gospel really focuses on that Thursday, and thank God that God gave us the Gospel of John. God gave us these stories that are given to us in John, and these teachings over the next few chapters, 14, 15, 16. Jesus is going to teach on things like prayer and the Holy Spirit, and then give us this awesome prayer that he prayed in John chapter 17. Anyway, we'll be focusing on those over the next little bit, as well as some of the other gospel accounts about what happened with that meal that he had with his disciples. So we'll focus on those things. Eventually we'll get to Jesus' trial. Right now, just focus on that last week that Jesus had with his disciples. Special thing, special time with him and his disciples. Awesome stuff. Anyway, hey, blessings to you. Be blessed.